Hi, I'm Liz Larson.
And I'm Bill McKenna. We're the hosts of the New Life Perspectives radio show.
We're also the creators of the Cognomovement system, where we help you rewire your nervous system so you can rewire your reality.
Join us each week for great conversations, amazing guests, and cutting-edge information on health, consciousness, and the keys to transformation.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Liz Larson and I'm here with my friend
Bill McKenna.
Hey Bill McKenna. You know, we've been talking a lot about learning and education recently and how the brain learns, about learning disabilities and problems people have with learning. And it's interesting how the language people use when they talk about it. So I'm going to ask you a question, Bill McKenna. Do you ever just feel stupid?
Here's the funny thing is, yes, I have to admit, there's times when, I'm just not grokking whatever it is. Like, I'll be reading something and it'll just fuzz out on me like, oh my gosh, you're, an IKEA set, everybody has an IKEA set, right? And I don't really like putting things together. Damn it, I want to go in and if I want a desk, I want to buy a desk. I don't give me a bunch of tools and nuts and bolts and, okay, don't do, and if I do pull the thing out, I'm like, I don't want the instructions. I just want to, listen, I can put this thing together myself. I don't need to, I mean, it's a desk, come on, but no, you got to put, A, B, C, but it just seems like A and E, it just makes sense that A and E would go together.
Well, first of all, IKEA is evil. I mean, their instructions never make sense, not to me, but I am there with you. Like, I am the queen of do not give me instructions. I'm going to figure it out. Like, I would rather go get hit by a truck in the middle of the road than read the directions. And Leah, our business manager, who's also my daughter, she's like, you're never going to follow the directions. Never. It's not going to happen. And she's 100% right. So here's the question with this. Is it a learning thing? I just hate the instructions. I hate the directions. They never make sense to me. And I don't like following directions. I don't. I figure it out myself, just like you. But I think the thing is that we often think about learning for children, like educating, like school. But the truth is, as adults, as grown-ups, even as old people, there's things you have to do and learn, like putting together a desk from IKEA. As it turns out, there is some information, there's some brain issues, there's some personality issues that would block a person from wanting to read directions. Now, there's people who won't take direction, right? And there's people who can't read directions. I'm one of the people who I don't want to read the directions. But also when there's any directions, I'm probably going to try to figure it out myself anyway, right? So the reason for me is my nervous system is what's called options oriented. And it's a spectrum, and I am on the highest end of the options oriented, meaning if you limit my options, I start to feel trapped or claustrophobic, right?
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is literally if you're not given an option, that you literally start to feel like I'm trapped. And that's a very bad feeling.
No, my nervous system, goes into fight or flight if I don't have options.
Hmm.
So it's called options oriented. And then the other end of the spectrum are people who crave directions. They absolutely love it. You give them a detailed list and they are on it and they thrive on it. But that person, if you were to say, wing it, here's a project, just do your best, wing it without any directions. And they're going to feel like I do. They start to flip out. You start to literally panic a bit. And then you've got people in the middle who are okay with what they're fine. They're fine with it. This
Isn't that is so interesting? My wife is a follow the directions, and she loves it. Like if you get, like a new piece of electronics or the put together a piece of furniture or something, she is excited. Like, oh my gosh, give me the instruction manual because we need to set this and I'm going to plug things in and this and that. I
Mhm.
mean, and the detail of it all. I mean, it blows my mind. How could you? And here's the thing, she finds joy in it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this is fun. No, not fun for me.
No, it is the worst. It's like for some people, it's like solving a puzzle or
Yeah.
following a roadmap, a treasure map. This comes in super handy when you're hiring people. So many people hire for the wrong job because they hire a creative or a highly options oriented person for somebody who needs to be very detailed oriented, the job. So when you have an accountant, a bookkeeper, you do not want them to be highly options oriented. You want them to be extraordinarily detail oriented, right? They know the rules of the laws and the taxes and they follow them and they love it. And I know people who are love the numbers. They absolutely love this thing. Like they'd rather do that than anything else. Again, I'd rather go lay in the middle of the road than have to do that. So it's not just our brain, it's about the way our nervous system is built and how it reacts to certain things. So when it comes to directions, it's really not about stupidity or not being smart enough to do it. It's just about the way the brain and body talk to each other on that subject. So, like a puzzle, a puzzle pieces, the little tiny puzzles, there's people who can sit and do that for hours and love it.
Hmm.
I would light it on fire. Like, I do not give me that. Like, that is what is fun about that. Like, I get anxiety even thinking about it, right?
Hmm.
But give me a box of paints and a canvas and a paintbrush, and I'll come up with something you never have seen before. Like all the pieces that don't have to fit together in a specific way, that I can make something out of. I can make something out of nothing, like nobody's business, right? But if
Yeah.
it comes in a very particular way that it's supposed to be done, that drives me crazy. And it is this it's the way my nervous system is set up and the way my brain processes information. So because I know that I'm at the high end of that spectrum, that's limiting. It's limiting because I will drag my feet. I will do anything not to have to fill out a form, you know, not to have to fill in the lines the way they're supposed to be filled in, book work. It's very, very limiting. So, and on the other end, people who are super detail oriented will feel that same way. They're limited and being able to just come up with things, wing it, have some creativity. So each of us would then have to learn another way if we want access to those skills. And that's where our work comes in. It's this ability to access other parts of the brain and other parts of the nervous system. So for me specifically, when I have to fill out a form, which we as business owners and grown-ups have to do, I literally have to reorganize my brain using Cognomovement to allow me to override my natural state to do that work.
It is it something that all of us could really use from a very practical perspective. You know, For me, all my life, I didn't like to fix physical things. Like there's a part of your car broken, and it's like, what this is going to happen? I'm going to go to the mechanic and he's going to do it. But my friends, same age as me, they loved it. They were
Yeah.
rebuilding engines. Literally, oh, we need to, you know what? I still remember we were only 18 years old, and my college roommate had his Volkswagen engine removed in the front yard and rebuilding it,
Yeah.
literally rebuilding it. And I was like, oh my gosh, you could hold a gun to my head, and I'd be like, no, I can't do it. But it's really the interesting thing here is that we all have the capacity.
Yeah.
And if we literally could utilize our brain in a different way, which is accessible now because we understand that your brain can be accessed physically through your eyes, because eyeballs and brain are one. The different movements, the different positions, the different ways that you utilize your physical eyes will give us access to a different part of our brain. And in that, instead of it being like, nails on a chalkboard to do it, you actually can start to get into it. Like basically, oh, well, that's kind of interesting how that fits together. That's kind of you start to all of a sudden like see the bigger picture of this device and how it's put together and why they did things the way they did them so that it fits together. It's like, oh wow, that's interesting. Now that is a completely different feeling than, oh hell no, I ain't doing this, I don't want to. It's like what I would say is playing the game a different way. Have you ever sat down at a board game and, like Monopoly or Life or one of these board games, you know, people play it in different ways. Some people like myself, I don't really enjoy, playing those games, but I have a daughter, so if I can spend time with her and play the game, okay, all right. But my sense of humor is that what I want to do is get an expression out of her, get a reaction from her. So I will go over to the Monopoly, and I'll take the money out of the case, and stick it in my pocket so that when you're going through, the process, I'm pushing other people's their little pieces around the board at a different, when they get distracted, I'll take their piece and put it to a different part of the board,
So
just
you're a cheater. You're a game cheater, Bill.
yeah, well, for fun, to just so that the shock and awe of like, hey, what happened? So, it's my point is that I'm looking for the funny laugh in it all and the shock and awe. But there's the other way to play the game is competitive, like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to win the game and I'm going to use some reasoning and logic and strategy. But these are all just different things.
So when our family plays games, that's exactly how we play them too. Because, with me being highly options oriented, a board game and all the rules with it, I mean, forget it. I don't want to do it. But if everybody is trying to cheat and get creative and work, I mean, it ends up in a brawl, but hilarious. It's so much fun. But there are some people who cannot play that way because the rules matter to them. The rules make them feel safe. It's orderly. It makes sense. And this chaos of going outside the line and making up your own rules does not work for them. So it creates then limitation for each of us. If I had to play the game exactly by the rules, I'm limited. First of all, I wouldn't even pay attention. Like, you've lost me 5 minutes in, probably a minute and a half in. And second of all, I'm just not going to be good at it. The rules are going to seem arbitrary, seem silly. But to somebody else, that feels like, personal development and growth, and there's fun in it for them, and it's deep. So it's about what is available, what's currently available in your nervous system, what part of your brain you have access to, and how that access makes your body feel. What is your reaction, right? So we have capacity, meaning, what is your current capacity to be able to understand something, learn something, and then take action on it, right? This is where we run into problems in schools, because you've got kids who seem to have limited capacity to read, to learn to read, or to do math or whatever, right? But what you and I know, because we can do such cool things with the eyes and create such amazing access to the brain, right? That becomes the second piece. You've got capacity, but then you have access. So most people's capacity is limited by their access. We can answer that question. We can create the access. And then what happens after that is what becomes available. What parts of the brain come online, become available, that now radically affect your capacity. So it's about surface area, right? The more parts of the brain that you have access to, and the more parts of the nervous system that respond to them, the more capacity you have. So that answers and creates a repair for this limited capacity that we think children have. Now, that limited capacity follows us around for the rest of our life and shapes who we think we are. And that is our biggest problem. And I see it with people in my family and people that I work with all the time who just say, I can't learn, I'm just dumb. And so then their world is very limited by that lie about their capacity, right? So let's take our first break. And when we come back, let's break this down and let's talk about this. Where is this huge problem that people have that follow them around with what they believe is their intelligence capacity, which I'm gonna pose is a damn lie. All right, let's take our first break. We'll hear from the good folks at the UK with Radio, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. All right, we're back. I'm Liz Larson. We're here with Bill McKenna. We're talking about learning, the capacity, the ability to learn, and how does everything to do with the way your body's set up, your brain's set up. So I'm going to tell a story, and I know I've told this before, but my youngest brother went through life, and I really believe it was a big part of why he ended up dying about 5 years ago, thinking he was stupid, thinking he was dumb. He had diagnosed with quote unquote dyslexia, and he just struggled to learn, but also that wasn't true. He struggled to learn in school. They said he had ADHD. So the teacher I remember this in second grade, and the teacher told my mom that she just wanted to pound my brother into the ground, which is, that's quite a thing to say. But what he would do was, he had so much energy. When the teacher had her back to the classroom, he would get up and run around the tables. See how many times he could run around before she turned back around, right? Like, she drove him nuts. And he just really struggled to learn to read the way everyone else did. Okay? So limited capacity, big label right on the forehead. ADHD, learning disorder, troublemaker, right? But what the school didn't know is that my brother, when he was about 5 years old, and this is not an exaggeration, could take things apart and repair them. So, for example, we always had a lot of people over, a lot of friends. My parents had, friends from their church. And sometimes late into the night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, families would be over and kids. Well, my dad was going to throw out these two fans. They just weren't working anymore. The old box fans. And he'd put them either at the back of the door, at the front of the door, somewhere near the door to take them out, to throw them away. Well, my brother took them apart and used the parts from each to build one that worked. And he was 5. And nobody knows where he got the tools. Nobody knows how he had any idea. But the truth was, he was a mechanical genius. I mean, genius,
Wow.
but never recognized in school. So let's talk about that for ourselves. So there's a capacity there that was hidden by school because he was labeled insufficient, right? All these labels. So here's the thing to know about my brother. He ran headfirst into everything. He never crawled, he ran. And my grandmother came out, he was about 2.5 years old, and they were going to take him for pictures. And my mom said, I don't want to take him for pictures. He's got a big egg on his forehead yet again. So my grandma said, look, that's how he looks at this age. Just take his picture, right? So what do we know, Bill McKenna? That's a series of
Yeah, that's a series of head injuries and concussions. And those, as a kid, especially us boys, we like to bang it up and you don't really think about it, rock fights, jumping your bicycle, jumping off a swing, doing all kinds of things, you end up with these things. And you kind of look at it as back in the day, it was just normal, no big deal. But these concussions have everything to do with our capacity, not only in school, but also in relationships.
everything.
So it is your physical function, you name it. The extreme example is to fast forward, into, let's say, for example, pro athletes like NFL players. There's so many of them that, here's these guys, they're millionaires and making unbelievable sums of money. And then off the field, they end up doing, some things that what we would call, self-sabotage. And these are, the highest level of athlete. But the thing is that it's really not their fault. They literally have a brain injury. And, for us, you don't think about it when you're a kid that you banged it up because, you don't remember, the injury, and your parents are just like, they're doing their thing, trying to get by. But the divorce, the chaos in your finances, your digestion, your shoulder problems, every possible thing is connected to your brain.
Yeah, and each of those has the propensity to limit that capacity that I was talking about. That your capacity to access parts of your brain that could give you those things that become limited, like the ability to read, or for other people, the ability to do math, for example. So the easiest way to put this is every time we have a little head injury, it can limit the access we have to that part of the brain. Because as kids, the brain is growing all the time. Left brain one day, right brain the next. The brain alternates how it grows. And if you have an injury on the day that you're growing that part of the brain, or in that part of the brain where you're trying to learn something like reading, for example, then it's going to skip over that and you're going to rewire around it. You're never going to quite have access to that part of the brain that you need unless you know how to gain access. And that is what is so exciting about what we do, Bill, is that we can regain the access to those parts of the brain by simply knowing how to use the eyes. And it's not just where the eyes look, it's the muscles around the eyes, it's the peripheral vision and how they can access things like color, things like shape, things like depth perception, proprioception have everything to do with how your eyes and brain are functioning together. So The thing about the capacity, that lie is what I said it before the break. For my brother, the school lied about him without knowing it, gave him a label about his capacity that was very, very limiting. That followed him throughout his life. He never had the confidence to do certain things that he wanted to do. It was always underlying. No matter how smart I am, no matter how accomplished I am, I'm stupid. That's how he felt about himself, right? So it creates this horrible limitation in our thoughts and in our feelings. It creates an injury to our nervous system. And the truth is, it's not true. All we have to do is help people figure out how to regain the access so they have the capacity to do what they want to do. Now, in my brother's case, he had an incredible talent. So that's something, right? He had incredible talent, but it was overshadowed by his capacity to access the full parts of his brain to do what he wants to do. So for me personally, it's very, very important that we help people create this change. And as adults, we can change it just as easily as we can change when we're kids, right?
It's true. And you said something really important, and that was my brother straight up ran. He never crawled,
No.
he ran. Now, that detail about your brother explains so much about his life. It turns out that we go through stages of brain development. As you said, Liz says left brain one day, right brain the next day. And if we're injured in one part of the brain during that developmental cycle, then we can have very unusual, problems. But one of those problems that presents itself is impulse control and relationships, but it could be, as I mentioned, so many other things. It reminds me of a story that took place here in San Diego. There was a legal team, basically the partner of all these lawyers. He noticed that there were so many emotional problems within his company that all these attorneys weren't getting along, and it was creating so much tension within the company that it was really hurting the business. So anyway, he goes off and demands that all of the attorneys go through basically cross-crawl training. So they have to all go through and start crawling. Now, Cognomovement does many of these, these type of exercises that recreate this crawling type of left-right mechanism. We need to go through this as part of our development. If we don't go through the developmental stage, then we have certain learning problems and relationship issues. So the entire team, as part of their employment, goes through the program, and one of the attorneys is in court, and he's literally in front of the judge, and he's making his closing arguments, and Your Honor, there's a jury, blah, 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 and your defendant is, and then he finishes, what he's saying, and he literally sticks his thumb in his mouth. And he sticks his thumb in his mouth and starts sucking it. And he's like, well, it pulls his thumb out of his mouth. Why, what was that? What was that? He's like, oh my gosh, it's kind of like, this is weird, and he just quickly pulled his thumb out, and that was that, But the other one, he and this has happened as well with some of our people with Cognomovement, is all of a sudden they come to us, and with this other attorney, he said he started wetting his bed. A fully grown man, never had the problem before, And all of a sudden he's wetting his bed. Well, he was wetting his bed because wetting your bed is part of the brain development. And he skipped that part of his brain development. The other one had skipped the part of the development, which was thumb sucking. We all sucked our thumb at some point, and he went through his little portion on that. So anyway, the interesting thing here, right, where the rubber hits the road, is all the problems within the legal firm calmed down. Everybody started getting along. They had productivity. If you're out there and you notice, imagine the people in your company or at your school or whatever, if they didn't have the weird problem, you know, weird resistance of some kind, how would things go? It's one of the things that, we do for corporations is to help them out. Basically, just go through the development part of the brain. They don't have to bring up like, oh my gosh, I was beaten as a child, or something like that. You literally are just wiring your brain, going through the parts that aren't quite working.
Yeah, I really like to think of it as providing access to more surface of the brain. And here's the thing, Bill's right. There's a lot of things that don't happen developmentally that should for all kinds of reasons. In my brother's case, he had bronchial asthma, so he spent time in the hospital alone. He had had a broken collarbone. He had had a lot of health issues. Those are some of the things that added to his problems and all of ours, right? And each of us in every aspect of our lives have one thing that we're like, dang, I'm stupid in that area. Like that's something I cannot do, right? I can't math, or for people who are highly, highly intelligent in a lot of areas, sometimes they can't relationship. Like they don't have access to that part of their brain that allows them to notice when someone's upset or when someone doesn't like what they're doing or when someone does like them. They don't have access to that part, right? So for every one of us, there's reason to want to find more access to the rest of our brain, which then sometimes leads us to brand new superpowers as well. So because of this technology that Bill and I have created, people don't have to live with their limitations anymore for whatever reason they came. And there's a million reasons, but it really doesn't matter the reason necessarily if you know how to solve the problem. So when we come back, let's talk about some really simple ways that people can start to detect where their brain might have a problem, where they're not having access, and where they can create greater access and then have greater capacity. So let's hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio, and we'll be right back. All right, and we are back. We're talking about learning, the capacity to learn, the capacity to understand, and the brain. So there are some really, really, really simple things that a person can do. If they're hearing our conversation and thinking, dang, I recognize myself in some of that, I'm limited in an area, or maybe you just feel stupid about a certain subject. Like no matter what you do, you just cannot seem to learn that thing, get that thing. So one of the easiest things that a person can do, number one, is recognize it. Recognize I am feeling limited. I'm feeling stupid, or I'm feeling less than in an area, or you'll notice yourself feeling like I can't do that. So you start avoiding things, subjects, conversations, outings, whatever it is. I just can't do that thing. And notice the feeling that it starts in the body. So we open this conversation with me sharing how if I don't have options, I start to panic. That is my signal to myself. Okay, body, I see what you're doing. I see what's happening here. So you simply notice how does it feel? How do you feel? And if it's not great, you'll be like, okay, I have a little issue here. Now, step two, what can we do with our eyes? Let's explore some of that. First thing you can do is once you recognize, oh, I'm having a feeling about this, it's not good. You can simply start to move your eyes in a big circle around your head slowly. So imagine that you're going to look straight up and just start to move your eyes across the ceiling and, like, let's say down the right wall. You can use your finger to follow and really, really stretch. As you do this and go all the way around 360 degrees, all the way around, really making those eyes stretch, you're going to find a place that's really sore or that your eyes will not move, right? And what does that tell us, Will? When the eyes won't go there, or they're really sore, or they don't want to move, what has a person then uncovered for themselves?
The beautiful thing about this is that you've discovered the relative area of your brain that is in resistance. It feels like resistance within the eyes, but what it really is resistance within your brain. How do we know this? How do we know this? You can do actually an experiment which is going to prove this to you. We can prove it to you right here and right now. It sounds like, oh, that's some sort of magical thinking or something. It's not. If you think about the most beautiful place you've ever been on the planet, the most in love, that when you really felt love, not something that's going to put you into grief, but your happiness, your love. Maybe it was like the most incredible, beautiful spiritual experience. Maybe it was the time that you were with your best friends and having the time of your life with them. A good time, a really, really good time. Whatever that was, and you roll your eyes very, very slowly, you're going to find that area is like you slip right through it. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's really easy. It's really easy to move my eyes. Because when you're in these elevated, wonderful states, there's not resistance in your physical brain. But when, let's say, I'm faced with, this particular person I can't get away from, and they're really a problem, or I have to do work that I hate doing, I'm avoiding something, and I really feel that, you're going to locate the exact position of that. This is an amazing kind of realization for all of us to know that this exists, but also there's something you can do about it. Imagine if there was no resistance in your brain to assembling the IKEA set. I would be just like, give me the damn tools. Okay, here we go. Step one, you'd be like, I'm going to do this. And you're going to, and not only that, but you won't really feel much about it. And you might even have a positive experience.
Yeah. And really all it's about is that your brain has learned where it's easy to go, where it's safe to go, what's available in terms of parts of the brain that are not injured or that the eyes have access to. And so that's what it does. It saves energy, it saves time. Our nervous systems get into patterns, and our brain is like that central nervous system computer. So it just gets into patterns that it does what it does. But once you understand that you can pop out of that pattern and access a part of your brain that does have the answer and makes it easier, your life opens. You become a really interesting kind of a genius in that way. And oh my gosh, the procrastination. Like, most of us spend so much time in procrastination because we think we're not good or at something, or your body just won't let you do it. And then, you spend time suffering and aggravating when really all it is you can override that in your nervous system with these simple eye positions. So if a person were to, for example, use this, 360 degrees, really stretching the eyes all the way up, like to the ceiling, down the right wall, across the floor, up the left wall with the head straight and center. So it really makes your eyes stretch. You can, with that simple thing, start to access more areas of your brain. And like we just said, you can also find trouble spots. The parts where your eyes won't really go are the part where the brain is actually, you don't have access to that part of the brain, and it's going to limit your capacity to do things. Another trick is find a partner and do this with them. Make them move their eyes in that big circle, or have them watch you move your eyes, and they will see where your eyes are not moving. They will skip, and it's usually one whole side of your vision, left or right, where the eyes will skip. They won't look there. They don't actually think they're looking, but they don't actually go. This is that limited brain capacity we're talking about. The eyes will not go where the brain is not available, not accessible. So if you simply can get a little more of that vision online, you can increase your brain capacity. So the Essentials program that Bill and I have created actually takes a person through a patented pattern that allows all of the brain to be accessed, finds the trouble spots, and quickly clears them out. And it's fast. And one of the biggest things we hear is people talking about being able to do things they could never do before, having skills they never had before, having greater capacity in life through simply being able to gain more access, creating more availability in the surface area of the brain. Pretty simple, but almost nobody knows about it.
There's an incredible story that this one client who had loved singing, but couldn't remember the name, the words of the song. Literally could not remember any of the words. So we did the Cognomovement basic exercises while looking at the words of the song, and lo and behold, he was actually, as he went through reciting it, in his mind's eye, all of a sudden this ability to to recite the actual words as he went along. The capacity for our mind, to our physical brain, to wire up in a whole new way is absolutely possible. And it could be a song, it could be rebuilding a car engine, it could be creating a better relationship, it could be new choices around what I'm eating, what I'm not eating. It could be anything in your entire life. What does your brain control? What aspect of your life does your brain control? Every aspect.
Yeah.
So making it better and filling in those gaps of the developmental cycles that we have not gone through, we skipped them somewhere along the line, or we banged our head somewhere along the line. Those are things that you can do something about today. And this, there's only one thing more joyful than doing it for yourself, and that's becoming a practitioner and doing it for other people as well. There's an entire practitioner program that we have where you can start helping humanity.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bill, what I love about witnessing someone having their brain come online and having their capacity expanded right in front of my eyes is the freedom and relief it creates for people. I didn't have this work when my brother needed it, but if I had, I think I could have saved his life. because what he saw as his current problem, I knew it wasn't. It wasn't his current problem. It was an effect of a belief system that had been installed in him, put on him, labels on him about limited capacity that started it all. If you can find that and you can clear that, so often the problems that seem to be presenting right now just vanish and people seem free. They just have the freedom to move about the planet and be who they really are. I think that's the thing. All of these limited capacities, all these limitations, in your heart, you know it's not you. You know this is not who you really are. But you can't find a way out. And so I think for me personally, that's the most beautiful thing is the freedom that it creates. And we've just 1 minute to go, but I want to say one more thing. People when they get older, one of the biggest things they say that's good for brain health is to learn new things. Why? Because it accesses new parts of the brain. So people who are constantly trying and doing new things access new parts of their brain. And those people tend to have greater capacity as they get older. But if you have this system and you use it as you age, as we've talked about so many times, like your mom, her brain seems to be aging backwards and her capacity for new things is greater and greater and greater all the time. So learning continues until we just about take our last breath. So it's important to us all to access our brain, gain access to all the parts of our brain, have all of who we really are available to us, and increase our capacity to just live this life to its fullest. All right, you guys, we have come to the end of this episode. Thanks for being here with us. And until next week, be safe and be well. Thanks, Bill McKenna.